Hey there, good to see you. So obviously I'm not at home right now. I am on the road. I am in southern Utah. I am doing some landscape photography here, and I am currently revisiting a landscape that I first photographed a year ago. Had never been here before. I took a chance on it, thought it might be, interesting and worth checking out, and it ended up being the highlight of my trip. But anyway, this video here is about this camera, the Fuji GFX 100S. Now, at the time of this video, this camera is not new. I mean, it's been around for what, like a couple of years now? It's been around for a while, but it is a new camera to me. It is just a completely different experience for me after shooting with Canon DSLRs and mirrorless cameras for years and years. I'm still using Canon cameras. I mean, this is a Canon R5 that I'm shooting with right now. I still love using them. But when it comes to my landscape photography work, I felt like I needed something different. I loved the hybrid approach to the R5, being able to shoot both photos and videos and do it all with one camera. But I soon realized that not only would it be helpful to have more megapixels that I could be using, to more aggressively crop images, because I found myself always cropping my R5 images and losing resolution. And obviously, increased resolution also makes it easier to make larger prints as well. But another reason for changing, and this may sound kind of crazy or a little bit ridiculous, but it's absolutely true. I've never really liked the 3:2 aspect ratio of full frame. Now, full frame has many great qualities going for it. And there are certainly cheaper ways to shoot in 4:3 than a GFX 100S. But what I always noticed whenever I would do landscape photography with the R5 and I'd be shooting in 3:2 is that when I would look at images, through the, electronic viewfinder or on the screen on the back of the camera, they always just felt too wide to me. Like there was always like more stuff on the left and the right side of the frame. What I would find myself doing all the time was either cropping my 3:2 images to 4:3 or 4:5 thereafter in post, or I would put the camera in a portrait orientation and take images that way, because then I would be slimming down the horizontal and I would be, I'd be framing my subject and composing it the way that I want. And that is the thing that has really become clear to me on this trip, because I am shooting almost always with this camera in a landscape orientation. I no longer feel the need to flip it around to portrait in order to slim down the aspect ratio, because 4:3 is the native aspect ratio of this camera. I've been importing images off the SD card, looking at them in Lightroom, and it's so bizarre being able to like zoom in like 300, 400% and see detail and see sharpness in the image. Everything on the camera is very sharp, it's very angular, it's very chunky. It kind of reminds me of like an older Canon 1D DSLR or something like that. It is a bit of a brick. Kind of hard to describe. Like it feels not quite as premium to me, I think, as I would have expected from a camera that is this expensive. Like the buttons feel like they swim around a little bit more than perhaps they should. And everything is just a little loose, and I don't know, like it just kind of feels like it needs a little more polish to me. Like they need to, tighten things up with the usability and the tangible nature of everything with the camera. I don't know. That's just my impression. Let's see what else. Oh, another thing that really freaked me out when I when I was out here. I spent a lot of time, going over the settings of the camera and learning about the camera before I came out here. But something that happened while I was here was I went to compose an image or to take an image, and the screen on the back was off. And of course, like the sun is setting and I'm trying to take an image and I'm like, what the hell is wrong with the screen? Well, it was then that I realized that the GFX has this view mode button on the side here, and I must have accidentally pressed this. Canon does not have this as a button on their camera, so I am not accustomed to having one of these. Usually you have to go into the menu setting on a Canon camera to do this. Speaking of the LCD screen here, this is also really different compared to a Canon camera. Like Canon cameras, they just use this kind of like flimsy little hinge on the back, this little lightweight hinge. And I've had to get this repaired with other Canon cameras in the past, because I think it's a little brittle. But the hinge on this GFX is, man, it is chunky. I mean, it is like a big slab of metal here, and it is very industrial, and I don't think there's going to be any issue with the longevity of this. My choice of lens, I've been shooting like 98% of the time with this GF 32-64. It's the fine. It's a good focal length range for me. It's like 25 to 50 or something like that in full frame 35mm equivalent. And that's generally where I like to shoot. Now I do have also the GF 100 to 200 with me. I don't know, maybe it's the subjects, maybe it's, you know, the type of images I'm creating, I don't know. But so far I just really haven't been using it. And I've been shooting everything with this 32 to 64. So another important thing that I did with this camera was set up the C1 and the C2 custom modes on the camera for shooting landscape images on a tripod, because I like using custom settings, because then when I'm out and I'm shooting, I can just, you know, I can just throw this mode dial, you know, right into C1 or C2, and I'm ready to shoot. All the various settings and menu things, all that stuff is already pre-configured, ready to go. I know exactly what I'm going to get when I put it in that custom mode, and I can start shooting and not dig through the menu system or change the drive mode or do any of that stuff. I am ready to go. If you are interested to know what these settings are and how I recommend configuring these settings, I will put a link down below in the video description to a blog post that goes into each one of these settings, everything that I've done to configure these two options here. To make it easier to use when shooting landscape images. It's a little too much for one video. I think it's probably better in written form, so check that out if interested. I guess one downside of the GFX that I have noticed that does feel different on this trip is that it is a heavier camera system. I mean, it is a bigger, chunkier camera. And when you have the camera body plus a GF lens and an L bracket on the camera, I mean, this is heavy gear. This is not like, you know, lightweight mirrorless camera gear. But anyway, overall, I mean, yeah, it's been a great experience on this trip. Obviously, I haven't had a lot of time with this camera, so, you know, because this is my first real experience using it out in the field. But so far, at least, it's been a really good experience, and I don't regret the very heavy price tag involved in the camera body, accessories, and the lenses and everything. I mean, it is. Yeah, these things are pricey, but I feel like in the long run, it's going to be worth it. I hope it turns out to be worth it. Let's put it that way. So yeah, again, if you would like to see the settings that I'm using for these custom modes here, if you are a GFX user and that is of interest to you, I would encourage you to check out my blog post down below. I'll link to that. And also, by the way, if you are a GFX user and you have your own recommendations for me, some things that I'm missing, some things I don't know about, I'm sure there are, please feel free to reach out to me, contact me. My email address is in the description below, or you could, you know, leave a comment on this video, whatever works for you. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks, everyone.